Defensive backs now. Let's go over that. I jumped the gun on this, but last week we talked about a few names. We talked about PJ Williams in case Marcus May missed, and I believe Marcus May is back, which is why PJ Williams did not play. But yeah, Marcus May returned, which sidelined PJ Williams, which obviously meant nothing for him. And we talked about Xavier Woods, who had 5 tackles, 4 solo, and the return of Jeremy Chin was very interesting to watch, which Jeremy Chin returned to his box role, which obviously put Xavier Woods a little bit deeper. So probably we can put to rest kind of the ceiling for Xavier Woods, I think, nowadays. Now with Jeremy Chin back. And Paulson Debo, who had a solid game, 6 tackles, 5 solo on 64 snaps. He had a lot of those early in the game, and didn't really have it the rest of the way, which is a little bit frustrating. But that is what it is. That is how fantasy works. So let's get into the name for this week. CJ Henderson is the first one to talk about. So CJ Henderson is a interesting guy, and he's had such an interesting road in the NFL. If anybody remembers, first round pick of the Jaguars under Urban Meyer was cut, surprisingly, or traded for next to nothing. I forget at this point. And now he's a Panther, and he's kind of had an up and down year. That high upside because he was the day one pick, but now ultimately all that matters is that he is a 100% snap guy, and that doesn't always matter for cornerbacks. But when they go against Denver, which is a top 5 or bottom 5 matchup in terms of top 5 matchup in terms of points allowed to the cornerback position, you like to see it. He had 10 tackles last week. Again, when he had those, he had 100% snaps, and that will continue because Dante Jackson is now done for the year with an Achilles injury, sadly. And Stanley Thomas Oliver is currently on the IR with a thigh injury. So the snaps will be there for CJ Henderson. The tackles were last week, and he faces a turnover-heavy team in the Denver Broncos, as well as a team that allows a lot of tackles to the cornerback position. So big fan of CJ Henderson this week, who is rostered in 0% of Yahoo leagues somehow and is widely available on MFL because of how deep the cornerback position can be. I'm here to tell you that last week, I don't think it was a fluke. I'm willing to ride that one more week.
Yeah, definitely encouraging. The first game he gets to fill in 100% of snaps, gets the first and the second half. He gets the production and he sees the snaps. So you just it's encouraging, at least. I think for that first game, he's clearly showing that he's not somebody that has to build himself into this role after a couple of weeks. He's somebody that can come in and make an impact immediately. So I'm kind of willing to ride it and see kind of what he can do moving forward. Maybe he can turn, like you said, maybe he can get his hands on some passes and get some deflections and kind of pad the stats a little bit more than even just the tackle floor and just give you even more upside. So definitely a good pick there. The next one we got up here is Rayshawn Jenkins, defensive back for the Jacksonville Jaguars. He's been excellent all year. I believe they were on bye this last week. But he's pretty well had 5 tackles or more in about every game since week 2 and a number with 8 or more, really kind of flirting with that double-digit tackle mark and giving you a good floor just off of, the most basic of the stats, somebody that can that appears to be someone you can rely on, if nothing else, a filler, So up next, he's got Baltimore Ravens, which is a top 10 matchup for safeties, mainly just because Lamar, if he's not running it, he's slinging it down the field. He's trying to go over the top, and that seems to be kind of what works for the Ravens. So those defensive backs for the Jaguars are going to be pretty busy this next week against a high-powered offense. Plus, this is the time to look at playoff matchups when you're getting down to weeks 13, 14 to 17 and 18. He's got even more favorable matchups as we get down the road, where he's going up against Dallas in week 15, which could be week 1, week 2 of your fantasy playoffs. And another high-powered offense is going to throw the ball a lot and keep those safeties and corners and defensive backs all busy and active throughout the game. Week 16, they play the Jets. Again, it's just going to be a team that's just going to be throwing the ball all game long. So I expect Rayshawn Jenkins to kind of keep up what he's doing, and if anything, maybe even improve on what he's done so far this season.
Yep, couldn't agree more. I think we see this too often with defensive backs where they get dropped through to bye weeks because it is such a deep position, especially if it's just defensive back and you don't have to differentiate beyond positions and take advantage of it. He's dropped in almost all my leagues because of his bye week. So go out there, snap him up. He's still the same player he was before, a bye week where he's able to be healthier. He missed a week with a concussion as well. So, or almost did at least. So that is our defensive backs.